Hi, glad to have you watching another Q&A for the 25th San Francisco Independent Film Festival. SF Indie Fest continues to provide new and alternative fare to moviegoers. This is the Q&A for the moving and impressive indie film, hashtag Look at Me. And we're lucky enough to have the director with us. Hey, Ken.
Hi, Jason. Thanks for having me.
A pleasure to have you here. Where are you calling in from?
I am calling in from my study here in Singapore.
Wow.
It's the first time I'm getting to do a post-show Q&A from my home with sunshine coming in through the window and without socks and shoes.
And what time is it there?
It's now 10 o'clock in the morning.
Wow. Okay, we're in San Francisco here, and it's after 6 o'clock in the evening. So I'm glad this worked out. So let's talk about your wonderful film. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was very entertaining, but also very moving and kind of profound. Right at the beginning of the movie, you started with a factoid or some information about what's happening in Singapore.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that opening factoid about the activists, lawyers, and personalities that are being kind of suppressed because of the way the government is, deeming illegal assembly and gay rights and all that other stuff.
Sure. The film begins with a kind of like a prologue that states that the film is inspired by true events and that quite a few people have been arrested or investigated or imprisoned in recent years for participating in illegal assemblies, speaking out on politically sensitive matters, so on and so forth. This film was really inspired right at the beginning by the case of a 16-year-old blogger. This was in 2015, who posted a video on YouTube. He was a YouTuber, and his, to be honest, his message was a little bit garbled. And if you go back and look it up, I really can't quite tell what his message was. All I know is that he said something about one of our important political leaders. He brought in this idea of Christianity, and because of like muddling the two together and then saying offensive things about the religion, he was charged, prosecuted, and then subsequently jailed. Now, he was 16 years old, and to be honest, I wasn't particularly interested in his specific case, but it did get me thinking, well, this is a young boy who has been charged for offending the feelings of a religious group in Singapore, right?
Right.
I think that this sounds quite insane where you sit there in the United States, but even from my point of view, it's like to legislate against feelings, that's like really slippery ground. So, I found that fascinating. So my thinking was, why don't I create a fictional character? And unlike the real life YouTuber, what if this character had a really compelling message to make? And, specifically, he wants to stand up for his gay twin brother. He wants to say that, it's not right the way gay sex is criminalized in Singapore. It's not right how he is condemned and deemed, unholy and an abomination and all those things. So what if he had a really good message, a message born out of love, in fact, but being a teenager, a hot-headed YouTuber, his message comes out all wrong and plainly kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
And of course,
But
so then what happens, Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll jump all around here because there's so many things to talk about with him. You set it up impressively at the beginning too, because as maybe an older generation guy, your lead characters were a little, they bug me a
You're an
little
older
bit.
generation guy. You're not an older generation
Well,
guy.
those influencers, they're picking on their mom, putting pranks on their mom. It is like, oh, it was bugging me, but then it was perfect for the setup of how he could get himself in that predicament.
Yes, yes. I think that what's fascinating for me in this day and age is that we are encountering a technology that we've never seen before. Look, every generation talks about the young people and how things were better back in our day, right? If you're in your 70s, you talk about if you're like growing up in the 70s, you talk about vinyl. If you're growing up in the 90s, you talk about cassettes and CDs, so on and so forth. But I do think that this new technology of social media, this kind of culture where you're filming yourself constantly, when your objective is to seize the attention of as many people as possible
Mhm.
and sort of secure them as fans and subscribers, that's new. That changes the way ordinary young people interact with those around them, and it kind of like puts them in a particular bubble that is potentially dangerous.
Yeah, making decisions before they think of what the ramifications of their video, releasing their videos. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
But it also reminds me of like, I love the dialogue. Are you the writer of the script?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Some great dialogue, and it just reminded me too, where he, when he's starting to go down into more trouble, like getting arrested or investigated, and he said, "Can I take a selfie?" With the police officer, or when the lawyer comes in, and he says, "I can't, I won't charge you, but can I have the rights to your book?"
That's right.
Right?
I mean, in a strange way, these are actually quite American ideas, right? The idea that there's no such thing as bad press, no such thing as bad publicity, and like everyone wants the IP of their life to be turned into a streaming success or a YouTube series. But I
Mhm.
think this is now no longer only an American phenomenon, it's a global phenomenon.
Right.
And in the case of this story, it happens in the context of a country with really quite stringent laws about what can be said, how it should be said, and therefore the YouTuber's instinct of seizing on every opportunity for fame and virality hits like smack against like the law,
Yeah.
which will not make sort of like exceptions, no matter how young you are, and no matter how well-intentioned you may be. If there is the letter of the law to be answered to, then it will be pursued fully. And I guess I explore how that might play out in this fictional story. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a wonderful script, story. The dialogue's fantastic. How challenging was it for you to write the screenplay? And it seems like you have a lot of savvy and knowledge of America because it's very accessible for us, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting that I think maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago, if I'd shown this film to an American audience, there might be some a sense of like distance and alienation, like, oh, this is an interesting specimen of a relatively unknown Southeast Asian country. But A, post Crazy Rich Asians, B, post
Right,
Trump,
right.
I think the madness of Singapore is now not so alien from an American audience. It's not so far away for you to say, hey, we're kind of like that.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Good point. Good point. And
yeah.
then you said the inspiration came from the true story of the 16-year-old, but the characters were great, well fleshed out, and the performances were wonderful. The mom really touched me. I mean that it just you hit it on the nose. I think it was perfect. She played it perfectly. It actually I shed some tears. I got watery eyed.
It's lovely
Whenever I
to.
saw the mom, her struggles at the end in the bathroom when she broke down.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
stuff.
Yes, it was a wonderful performance by the leading actress Pam Uy, and also the actor Yao, who played both the twins, Sean and Ricky. I was very fortunate. I have a lot of experience working in the Singapore theater, and I culled a lot of my cast from the theater community here. So I managed to get like a wonderful mix of like really popular Singaporean comedians actually, to like strengthen the sense of the black comedy in the film. But then I had really powerful top-notch dramatic actors who I knew would, you know, sort of like land the big emotional punches that the story required. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was some of the other dialogue where you know, that lawyer was fantastic too, talking about like, you know, you love that he came to defend our leads, our main characters, but then he was you know, a relief, a little bit, a comedic relief.
Yes, that's right.
It's like I've had 30 cases, and what was it like, and I haven't won any of them.
Yeah, so 30 LGBT related cases, and I haven't won any of them. Of course, that there is a kind of like a kind of like a sliver of truth to that statement, and as far as, you know, there are real live lawyers in Singapore who have in recent years mounted several constitutional challenges to try and argue that, you know, that criminalizing gay sex in Singapore is fundamentally unconstitutional. And as it happens, this might be an interesting sort of like current affairs a nugget for American viewers, that literally 1 month ago, the law that criminalizes gay sex, 377A, was finally repealed.
All
So
right.
so in terms of the timeliness of the film, how sort of current it is in terms of charting the journey of the gay rights movement, the LGBTQ movement in Singapore. One of the twins in the film, of course, is a gay rights activist. I drew a lot of inspiration from the real LGBTQ activists working in Singapore all these years to try and repeal this problematic law. Of course, when Singapore's parliament repealed this 377A, it also unfortunately introduced a raft of other kind of regulations that would quote unquote sort of enshrine sort of like a straight marriage.
Ah, I see.
So there are other new challenges for a new generation, I think, of LGBTQ rights activists and allies who will want to see more progress in the right direction
Yeah, yeah,
of true equality. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And back to the performances. How did you go about it? You said you worked with some of these people before. Did you go and get a casting director and actually put out a casting call? Because I think I mean, or did you write for these actors in mind? Because you nailed it in casting. They're all. I mean, are they even gay too? The brother gay, because and they look like brothers. And
Yeah.
I mean, well done.
I'm very proud of my leading actor Yao. He is not gay, but well, he plays both the straight and the gay twin. He plays both of them. And in terms of like casting the entire film,
Wow.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
still blown away by that.
that's really nice to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I've had sort of like more than a decade's experience working in Singapore film and theater, and I had quite a number of characters with actors in mind when I wrote these characters.
Okay.
And a few I brought in for sort of the usual process of reading and auditions, so on and so forth. But I think for the most part, I kind of knew who I wanted to cast, and it was a question of persuading them to
And
jump
you got
aboard,
them.
to jump aboard a somewhat controversial and risky project. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But
Yeah.
then once they read the script and probably saw the material and the other performers, they were all aboard.
Yes, yes, I think they were all quite excited to be part of a kind of Singapore film that's really quite unusual in the context of our industry here. Yeah.
Maybe this is a naive question. Was it dangerous for you to make this film?
Um, I wouldn't say it was dangerous per se, but certainly it was very, very difficult because
Mhm.
of controversial nature of its themes. We had to be quite careful in how and where and when we shot the film. There were a number of instances when we were shooting in public spaces where we'd gotten the permit to shoot, but then there would be kind of government officials who would come and check on us and inquire what we were doing, and then we would have to sort of be a little kind of like careful that we didn't give too much away, so to
Right.
speak, about the exact content of what we were filming, because technically back then it was still some of the scenes depicted was still technically illegal.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And so now, is there any? This has been out for a couple of years, though, right?
Yes, I shot the film in 2019.
So
Uh,
any worry now, like you had to kind of tiptoe when you're in production and be careful in production. Any worries about any thing now in distribution and release?
well, in terms of local distribution, unfortunately, the film has been banned in Singapore, so I've not been able to show it here.
Did you kind of maybe expect that a little bit though?
I think I did have an inkling. I don't think anyone who's worked here long enough and knows sort of like the climate here knows that censorship is something of a problem in Singapore. However, yeah, like you do hope that it will go through, because society's changing, that there is a growing call for sort of more acceptance of the LGBTQ community. I did feel that the film being very relevant and interesting to Singapore would be allowed, so that it would spark the sort of like necessary healthy debate about these issues here. But I guess I was wrong in that regard, in terms of
Mhm.
how much more open
Yeah.
the situation would be. 99%, I guess that maybe we would be banned, but then the 1% that you hope, it still stings a little
Yeah.
and
Well,
disappoints.
I'm impressed too that that didn't stop you from making it too, because a lot of times in American filmmaking, even in indie filmmaking, we think about the end product and will it reach an audience or a market, or will we be able to sell it? Will it make
Yeah.
money? And so that might shut you down from making a movie.
I think that my executive producers and associate producers on this film were all incredibly wonderful, supportive people who saw the value of the film, and that it was a worthy story to tell, and that they were prepared that possibly local distribution might be limited, but that if the film was good, that it would be well received elsewhere, and that hopefully we would get international distribution, and hopefully with festival showings like such as at SF Indie Fest, we'll get just more visibility, more interest from distributors, and more kind of like opportunities for distributing the film outside of Singapore.
Yeah. Well, let's get a little bit filmmaking nerdy here. How were there any challenges in production other than like the climate and being kind of careful? What kind of filmmaker challenges, or what was the most challenging day on set?
Well, I would like two things come to mind. The first is the fact that I didn't have a huge budget. Well, this is in
That's always the case. That always comes up. Didn't have enough money.
yeah, and so particularly I then could not rely on particular, very sophisticated special effects. So, the scenes with the twins really involved very old-fashioned kind of like camera tricks, like having a really, really good body double who wasn't just a body double, but who was a very accomplished actor who kind of could play off Yao. His name is Shane Majuki. We kind of sent them to like a fitness and conditioning person so that they could get their body shapes as similar as possible, because I was not going to be able to composite anybody's face on anybody else's body. So this was just sell the illusion quickly, use some very old-fashioned camera tricks, not very complicated at all. And then I think if the performance is as compelling as Yao achieved, then within the first 5 minutes you're in the story and then you don't think anymore. But just to sort of like get that right was quite kind of tricky, technical.
And sometimes the old-fashioned filmmaking is better, less is more, so if you would have tried to go high-end special effects, just you might have lost something.
That's true. The second thing, of course, is the fact that there would have been no way that I would have been allowed to shoot in a Singapore prison. So I had to kind of like, hire a warehouse and build a prison and make it look convincing. And I think that, my production designer, Jet Lim, did a very admirable job. We did our research. We looked at how the Singapore prisons look like, and we tried our very best to replicate the cells to as similar to what you might get in reality.
Well, the production value across the whole movie is fantastic. Just from the art department to the costuming, and especially the cinematography, the lighting. Some beautiful shots too.
Thank you.
There was, from the opening. Well, real quick before I get into some shots that I remember. So how did you get? Wasn't there a 2-shot of them in the audience at the church?
Yes. So there are 2 shots of them right at the beginning. Ricky
next to each other.
Yeah, next to each other. Ricky takes up a book, throws it, hits Sean on the head. There was nothing complicated or fancy or digitally kind of like enhanced about them. It was just hit him in the head right at the same point over 3 or 4 takes, and then just composite the 2 shots. It was really, really simple. And in terms of sort of cinematography, again, I've had the privilege of working with an amazing cinematographer. His name is Russell Morton. And I think we wanted to try and create a sort of like enhanced reality. This is a film that kind of goes from being a sort of a kind of black comedy to a prison drama to a family drama. So we were kind of mixing up genres, and intentionally so. And we wanted the cinematography to be able to sort of like pull these varied genres together and yet come across as like a unity, and which was sort of like cinematically you didn't feel that you were jumping all over the place, and that you didn't feel that you were existing in one movie in the first act and then another movie in the second and third. So we kind of worked quite hard to try and create a look.
You pulled it off. In my opinion, it does have different emotional tonalities, like major tonalities in the first and second half, but it fit. You pulled it off. So and you grabbed this from the beginning too, with all these high production values. Like even the church scene, that was a production within a production. I can see where your theater background comes in hand now, because that stage production was elaborate.
Yes, we did have to try and create a mega church, and in Singapore, these
is that church real?
It's not real. I recreated it. But like you said, we probably the theater influence didn't hurt there. yeah, these churches in real life are, 3,000, 5,000 strong,
Mhm.
and in fact, again, are an American tradition that we sort of like imported to Singapore.
Yeah.
This is very much sort of like a new breed of kind of like religion that has kind of developed and sprouted in Singapore maybe over the last 2 decades. They weren't particularly present or visible when I was a little boy growing up here. But they're now very, very big here. They're very big business here, and their services are massive, massive productions
Yeah.
that usually begin with something akin to a rock concert. So I needed to recreate that sense of scale, that sense of immersion, into a musical spectacle.
Right.
And of course, just as the congregation would be drawn into sort of like the charisma of a very sort of like appealing pastor, albeit like a right-wing fundamentalist pastor, so too did I want the audience to feel in the
Right.
movie that we're kind of almost drawn into this
Yeah.
church event.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it worked for me. I totally was. I bought in immediately. Kudos and credit to you and your
Thank you.
collaborators. And I just want to point out some other. There's some great just compositions, indie filmmaking kind of angles and stuff. I loved the girlfriend, the boyfriend at the beginning on the pier. And did you get lucky, or the trains going by in the background? It's like, and then you raise up to the cameras. I mean, just amazing. Good job.
Yeah, thank you. We planned those things. We
Okay.
got permits to shoot on the pier. We picked our spot, and then we waited for the trains, and then we timed the you know
How
the
many
mo-
takes did it take to
the
get the trains just right?
Well, this is Singapore, and if there's one thing we do very well, it's infrastructure and being organized. And so, the trains do pass with some regularity. So it wasn't that difficult in terms of like timing, like knowing when the trains would come. It was more like, well, matching that with the movement and like a slightly complex camera crane movement. But I think that wasn't the most complicated shot,
Right.
but it is a beautiful shot, and it does set the scene for what is otherwise, in many ways, quite a beautiful country,
Mhm.
quite a beautiful city too. Yeah.
And then another shot, maybe not as difficult, but the scooter shot towards the end, the high speed scooter chasing shot, the low angle one looking up at him. I love that kind of stuff. How'd you get that?
Well, we do have some very, very high level sort of camera and gripping crew in
Mm.
Singapore, and our key grip, his name is Malik. He's worked in some big Hollywood films, so he knew what he was doing, and he rigged up our cameras to vehicles as big as a Rolls Royce to to something as small and wobbly as a scooter, a
Right.
Vespa. So like so we had good technical crew to help us pull off some interesting shots too. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell your team, well done on all levels. From the cinematography to the performances to the editing to the art direction. It just I was impressed all the way through. What do you hope comes from this? What do you hope audiences take away from this?
I at heart, like I want audiences to sit in that cinema, be really sort of engaged and entertained by this film. It deals with some really dark material, it deals with some very serious themes, but at the end of the day, I'm a filmmaker and my job is to entertain. And I kind of want the audience to sit through the hour, 40 minutes, and feel at the end that when they leave the cinema that it was a bit of an emotional roller coaster ride, but that they had a good time. On whole, they didn't want money back for their tickets, and that
No way.
and that they learned something, I think, interesting about my country, Singapore, that is somehow also resonant in the societies where they come from. So whether you're in San Francisco, New York City, or cities in Asia, in Korea, I think that this film kind of like has its place in any modern urban society, and that its issues are relevant. And I want kind of like those thoughts to be simmering in the audience, like, is there
Yeah.
anything in this issue that relates to me and my life? And I think more often than not, there will.
Yeah. I think you accomplished all those things.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for making the movie. We got to wrap this up soon. Is there anything you want to discuss or mention that I didn't cover?
No, we covered a lot. I just want to say a big thank you to SF Indie Fest. Big shout out to every single audience member who took the time to watch this movie, and like in an age where basically there is so much stuff out there on Netflix, and I'm just very grateful that you guys took the time and sat here and to be with us. So thank you.
Well, we're grateful you made the movie and you submitted to our film festival. So thank you for doing it. Keep making movies.
Thank you. I will certainly take that with me. Thanks.
And if you're ever in San Francisco, look me up and we'll connect.
I will.
All right. Good meeting you. Congrats.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye for now.